Good evening. Happy Sunday. And
Evening.
for some reason, it's still light outside. If anybody can get to the bottom of this, let me know in the chat. How you doing, Xander?
Wouldn't that be the daylight savings?
Oh yeah, the nonsense with the clocks.
Yeah. You didn't
That's
notice
why
this morning?
I did notice. I did notice. Actually, that was my opening. That was my opening for my homily today. I
Mm,
go out there and I just I'm quiet for a second. Now that throws people off, when
yeah.
you're quiet all of a sudden. I just said, "Happy daylight savings time, everybody." And I got a polite church chuckle out of it, and that's
There you
all I'm looking
go.
for.
It's good. Tune people in.
Yeah,
Did you have a 9 a.m. mass this morning or?
I did.
Okay.
I had I had the 9 a.m. and I had the 6 p.m. today.
Okay.
The boss
Yeah,
was supposed to
that's
have the 6 p.m., but he had something going on tonight, so I got it, and I gave it to him next week because I sent the calendar.
excellent. So
Yeah.
grab those key duties, right? Work the system from the inside.
Yeah, well, and
Yeah.
then I can do things the way that I want to. And
Mhm.
he's just grateful that he doesn't have to do it. So everybody's pleased with this arrangement. There are no downsides.
Mm. Yeah. So yeah, I went to 9 a.m. mass this morning at I just recently sort of switched my Sunday parish routine. So I switched parishes on Sundays, and yeah, so I feel like I made the right decision going today. It was actually one of the things I liked is um after mass they had like a coffee for people to gather, like coffee and snacks, so people can just meet in the common area and I guess have fellowship, I guess is the term.
Yes,
That's really
yes.
nice.
I'm a fan. I'm a fan. Our church isn't really set up to do that well right now, but because we don't have the church building. And so the place where we would have coffee and donuts is where we're having church right now. So we can't.
Oh, okay.
It'd be
Yeah.
like trying to clear out the chairs. I just I just can't wait for that church to be done. It's gonna be so much nicer to actually have a church than to be like in the social hall with movable chairs. It's just ugh.
Mm.
It's not the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah, no, it's
And so
it's
we're
it's
fixing
not
it.
the same.
We're fixing it.
Mhm.
And if anybody has a couple million lying around that they'd like to throw our way, we
Just
will
say
gladly take it. You might even be able to get like a room or a hallway named after
there
you.
you go. Stained glass window.
You
That
might get
yeah,
a
if
state.
you pay for
Well,
the stained glass window.
yeah, we're not even like as far as the construction goes right now. We're just putting in glass and like when we can, we'll have the stained glass planned out, but to
Yeah.
actually install it is going to be that could be 20 years from now. Who knows?
So are you a new church or is this a renovation on an old church?
This is so West Fargo, North Dakota, is growing rapidly. But when our parish was founded, it was a pretty small town,
Hmm.
and it was a really wild setup that they went for back in the 80s. So they actually had a Lutheran church on one side and a Catholic church on the other, and then a common office and gathering space in the middle, which was
Mm.
kind of a revolutionary thing.
Yeah.
As West Fargo starts to grow, that becomes unmanageable because there's just too many people. So I think about 7 or 8 or 9 years ago, the Catholics sold off their half to the Lutherans and started building in the space that we're in now.
Okay.
So we've got the school, we've got the offices, and we've got the gathering space where we've been having mass for 5 or 6 years now. And now we've got office extension immediately behind me. So me and Father Carmel don't have to share an office anymore. And then
Mm.
way over there, there's steel up in the air for the church.
Okay, that makes sense. I was wondering about the second seat over there. I was wondering if you had like one for one desk for the computer and one desk to resist temptation.
That would be that's actually what I did one year in seminary because we had these study rooms. If your room was small, you would be in this study room.
Mhm.
And there was originally going to be 5 of us in this one study room, and then like 2 guys got kicked out or left. And so there
Okay,
was only 3 of us. And Miller, he was never in there. And so me and Colin, we both had 2 desks apiece.
nice. I actually, um, I had in my first year of university, like everyone's in. I stayed in what do you call it, the commons or the dorms, and everyone's supposed to have a roommate in first year, but my roommate uh didn't left after like 3 4 weeks and didn't tell anyone that he was leaving. So as far as the school because was concerned, he was still there, so I got to keep my room and sort of
Oh,
have
they
like a
did throw
summer for
somebody
this.
else in there?
Well, they normally would, but he was an Indian, like a native, and he was part of a school program where he wasn't paying for tuition, so he didn't bother to tell anyone that he had stopped attending classes. And yeah, so they just kept the room, assuming that he was there. And it wasn't until like a few weeks before the end of the school year before someone came in and said, "Is your roommate still here?"
Haven't seen him.
I haven't seen him yet.
He ghosted me. Wow.
Mhm,
That's yeah, but you don't have any skin in the game. Like,
mhm.
I don't know though. People are crazy with college, right?
Yeah.
Like, they'll just not go to class while they're on the hook 20 grand.
Yeah, I know, because it's sort of like this ephemeral financial thing in the future that he has no connection. Like honestly,
Yeah.
I don't blame him because he had a young family already on the reserve, and so I think it was hard for him to actually like spend that time away from his family, and it sort of started that he started doing long weekends, and then the long weekends sort of got longer until he just didn't come at all. So I think that he already had a very substantive life and responsibilities on the reserve. So it was, even this. So there was a difficult balance of opportunities for him. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Interesting.
something
Yeah.
that people don't consider, that like you offer, like the skin in the game also sort of raises the stakes for people too, right? That if
Hmm.
you're so committed to doing it, and even though you might um you if you lower the bar for entry, you're also lowering the commitment. So um you might encourage more people to sign up, but then also they're gonna have,
It's
like, they may have.
it's the
Yeah.
Planet Fitness scheme,
Yeah.
right? Like that's how they're able
Mhm.
to run those Planet Fitnesses at what is it, like 20 bucks a month or 10 bucks a month or whatever. You can get that gym membership, but because you're paying so little for it,
Yeah.
they never go. And
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, I've got a gym membership that I haven't utilized in like a week too. So I will point out the glass walls all around me.
Mhm.
But it's like, yeah, I'm spending a little more than it's a really nice gym that I go to. I'm spending a little more than 10 bucks a month on it. So,
That's good. So how's
Whew.
your Lenten journey going?
How's my Lenten journey
Uh,
going? You know, my main focus this Lent was getting some of the we could call it uh garbage internet time under control.
hmm,
You know what I mean by garbage internet, right?
yeah.
And some of that's going well, and some of that's like, dang, oh gosh, this is hard.
Yeah.
So I have failed. I have failed in my Lenten resolutions. Throw the stones. Throw the
So
stones. Light
sackcloth,
the
where is it?
fire. Um, but yeah, if that's a realistic assessment of where I'm at, then here we are. And I think the kind of the discipline that I'm looking for is something that I uh, want to keep going forever because I don't need to waste more time on the internet.
Mm,
Mark's the
stones.
only one with the stones to throw stones. All right.
I had what was I gonna say on that? Yeah, I also did the internet thing. I specifically said I was going to refrain from Twitter, reading Twitter. I could still post things if there was something I really needed to announce or something, but I'm going to refrain from reading Twitter, and I've done that. And I've also gone through like my video subscriptions and that, and tried to like tell the algorithm to stop showing me things that are intensely interesting for me, but not really productive uses of my time. And it's actually that's gone pretty well, because it's still showing me interesting things, but just more interesting things that are more along the lines of what I'm doing these days, and not like StarCraft videos or something that's like
Yeah. Yeah.
that's just is just a mindless distraction
Yeah.
for me now. Yeah.
I got sucked in this morning. One of my Lenten disciplines was to do that, but I saw this video where they took all of the Half-Life video games from the original Half-Life Black Mesa incident, and it's
Mhm.
told from like different perspectives, and like put those all together in one 8-hour
Oh yeah.
video. And I didn't watch the whole thing, but I was like, oh, how are they going to do this? Oh, he's really wasting time.
No.
Bad priest.
Yeah.
Oh, they did a really good job on it too, because things were
Mhm.
all happening at the same time, and it made sense the way they were doing it. So anyway,
Yeah.
while I can feel bad about myself for having clicked on that, I didn't make it. So
There you go.
that's
You
step
came
in
to
the right direction.
you came to your senses. Where I have failed this week, I've stumbled in my rosary walks. So I don't know. I made it till Thursday without missing a day. So I don't know how far into Lent that was. I don't haven't we haven't actually made it halfway. It feels like it should be halfway done.
I want to meet those people who keep their Lenten disciplines 100%, no failure.
Yeah.
It's like,
Who are those people?
who
Yeah.
are you? Tell us
They're
your secrets.
Yeah. They're probably too pious to even admit it.
Yeah,
Stupid
good for
humility.
them. Good for them. Their stinking humility.
Hmm. Yeah, there's a couple uh Bible readings I wanted to throw at you today.
Let's go.
Let's go. Actually, like, so I went to um Latin Mass yesterday.
Mhm.
So I actually I thought the reading from that, it was called a lesson, was really good.
Oh, then we
Um
better get it up here in the Dewey Reams.
I have it in the Dewey Reams. I have a link for you here.
Oh,
Okay.
you've got a link? Okay.
I've
I
got
was
a
gonna
link.
pull it up myself, but if you've
There
got
you
it
go.
handy.
I got Dewey Reams and
There it
Revised
is. There it
Standard
is.
Version, Catholic Edition.
That's also pretty good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the
Ah, alrighty. Let us go here and we'll share screen. I don't know if that side by side is actually gonna look good here on screen. I think
well,
I'm gonna
you see that little arrow there at the
I think
side
we're
that'll
gonna
close the ads. Oh no, keep it up.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah,
Okay.
keep it up, and then see the arrow there on the right hand side there. Click that, and the ads go away, and then you have more space.
Okay, we'll put a little zoom on it. A little zoom on it.
There you go. There we
There
go.
we go. All right, that looks decent. All right, what you got on your mind?
Um,
This is Jacob deceiving his father
is that right?
and getting his.
Oh, did I get this wrong? I
No.
thought
This is the reading from yesterday. I went to the Latin Mass too.
okay. Was it? I thought it was wasn't this the two men in the garden? Oh, or was that another reading yesterday? I remember
Yeah,
there
well, that would be from Daniel. Definitely not from
Daniel. That was
Genesis.
Daniel. Yeah, I thought it was Daniel, and then I was like, oh, lessons. That looks right, and I
Yeah.
probably pulled up the wrong thing. That
Okay.
was from Daniel. Oh
Do you want to go
man,
there? Is that what we're looking
yeah,
for?
I'm looking for it. If you can, I'm gonna actually.
All
I'll look it
righty.
up.
If I were brilliant, I'd have
Sorry,
like a funny little commercial I could run right now, and
I could
everybody'd
find
be
it
like,
here. Okay, it was lessons as genuine. Where's Latin Mass for the 11th, March 11th. Huh. This is I thought this app was right. Okay. Can we
I mean, like
what is
that
it?
was the reading we did yesterday. I remember because it takes a very long time.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, maybe we can look at this then. But I wanted to talk about that Daniel reading because
Okay, all right, we'll
that's
talk
what I
about
did.
that. We'll talk about that.
Daniel, what? How do we find that Daniel? Uh, Garden maybe Garden.
Yeah,
Let's see.
chapter 13. Here we go. Here we go. Got it. Got it. We're ready to go.
13. Oh, nice.
Daniel 13.
Yeah, that's it. There you go. Perfect. Okay. So I guess, maybe the Latin mass I went to, they weren't on the right on the calendar the way they're supposed to. I'm still figuring that out. But yeah, so Susan's beauty attracts two elders. What I thought was really interesting about this, because there's lots, it's a long reading and there's lots you can pull out of it. I mean, the TLDR of it is Susan's very attractive young woman,
Virtuous as well.
virtuous and attractive, and she has servants, but they're the two elders of her community start lusting after her, and they basically stalk her. And when they know that she goes to the garden to bathe, and she sends her servants away, so she's alone, and they catch her alone, and they tell her that, like, basically, lie with us or we'll tell everyone that you lied, that you met a young man
Behold,
here.
the doors of the orchard are shut, and nobody seeth us, and we are in love with thee. Therefore consent to us and lie with us. But if thou wilt not, we will bear witness against thee that a young man was with thee, and therefore thou didst send away thy maids from thee.
Yeah, exactly. And then she chooses, like she basically she goes and says, like, she's darned if she does and darned if she doesn't. But she chooses to go with the truth in God and let the chips fall where they may.
It is better for me to fall into your hands without doing it than to sin in the sight of the Lord. Yes, every time.
Yeah. So yeah, and it ends up that, like, the whole accusation goes through, and Daniel ends up saving her by doing a little
He's got some great
Matlock
lines in here.
or Murder She Wrote, right? Like,
Yeah.
she's just a classic. He separates them and figures out that they're lying by catching them in a lie.
And Daniel said, well hast thou lied against thy own head. For behold, the angel of God, having received the sentence of him, shall cut thee in two.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was actually thinking of this as actually like Susanna's sort of a dilemma there is something that we commonly face, right? Where it's sort of like we can do what is pragmatic of the world, or we can follow God.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We can aim at the truth and follow God, or we can do what's pragmatic of the world, and compromise ourselves in doing that, even though it seems like the rational and maybe sensible choice. And I think that there's lots of situations in life where that comes up, and it's interesting to see that Susanna, chose God and chose that other world. So and I think that, like, that's part of, like, Jordan Peterson's message there, right? Is like, go with the truth and see what happens.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you have the right principles, and if you always live them out, if you're always manifesting what's best, then that's always, I think, the best ending, even if you do happen to get eaten by a lion.
Yeah.
Because literally the only person whose opinion matters is God.
Yeah.
Like, you put everybody else's opinions. I mean, now we don't want to be too extreme with that, because sometimes God does speak to you through other people.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. So,
but I think, yeah, I think that even you know there's the fact that like putting that with God and like God matters, but also just pragmatically in the long game, like putting your chips with God is the way to go, right? And because she had no way of knowing that Daniel would rescue her from this situation. And even then, like even Daniel didn't have any intent. Like he feels the Holy Spirit move him to do it, right? Because I don't think Susanna is any. I think that part of it is like he says that Susanna is like nothing to him, and he's just there. And then he's like, he gets it.
Yeah, the Lord, we got it in verse 45 here. The Lord raised up the Holy Spirit of a young boy whose name was Daniel.
Yeah.
Are ye so foolish, children of Israel, without examination or knowledge of the truth? You have condemned a daughter of Israel. And then the people mock him. This is the cool part, right? So all the people turned again in haste, and the old men said to him, "Come and sit thou down among us, and show it to us, seeing God has given thee the honor of old age." And
Yeah.
I don't know. And then Daniel's just not. He doesn't care what these old men think. He's just like, no, you guys are rushing to the sentence. You guys are rushing to the sentence before you actually examine this case. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And
and
that,
fun.
and sort of the other the like they left us like to talk about like the power distribution of that too, but so like the elders are abusing their power, and they are sort of like doing the trust the science thing, right? Where it's like, you know, we're the experts, we're the law, and who's this Daniel punk to even be suggesting that we may be lying or framing this in a way in an incorrect light. Hey Valerie.
Hi, how you guys doing?
Doing all right. We're just sharing parts of the Catholic Bible because that bit's not in the Jewish or the Protestant canon. So
Really? It's that one the
no,
book Daniel's up there?
that bit's only in Greek, and so
I kind of vaguely remember a story like that, but I don't remember the name Susanna. So I
yeah,
was like,
it's not in the Protestant canon. So there's
oh,
actually into Esther and Daniel. There's Greek editions in the Catholic Bible that aren't anywhere in the Hebrew. And I like
oh,
the Greek editions to Esther because what it mostly is people sending up prayers to God, and they're very wonderfully written prayers.
wow. Very
So
cool.
it doesn't yeah. So anyway, it's
Are
just one of those interesting things.
are there any other Susans in the Bible, or is this the Susan that gives us all our Sus?
I've got to figure out what Samuel's mom's name is. Ugh,
Was it Hannah? No, not Hannah.
that
That's what
is.
Ishmael's mother. I'm
No. I think that's right.
So she might be the Susanna, like the source of the Susans and the Susannas. Might be the only one, maybe, or I don't know. How many Sus are in the Bible? This is a good Chat GPT question.
Yep.
Used to say Google, but now you know.
Yeah,
Jacob.
Samson's mom is, or Samuel's mom is Hannah. You were right, Valerie.
Oh, I would. Okay.
Stick with your guns. Stick with your
Okay.
guns.
It's good to know.
Uh,
I
so the word Shoshana shows up, but not sure it is a name. Alrighty.
There is a how many Susan? Oh, okay. There is one mention of Susanna. Yep, she's the only one. She's the Sue.
She is the source of the Sus.
Yeah.
It means flower. It is often translated rose.
Oh, very cool.
Mm.
I heard that from my seminary friend that Hebrew tends to be more functional when it comes to description. Like, fish could be anything that swims in the sea or something like that. So maybe
Right. So that's if I understand this correctly, and I know Jacob's in the chat, and he'll correct me if he sees me going astray. But there's it's like that's why shellfish are not kosher because God put the fish into the sea. So what are those shellfish doing there? They're it's not right. It's against what it's like a mixing of categories or
Oh,
something. And then the beasts are supposed to split the cuff and chew the cud. And those that don't, it's like, oh, we've got their categories mixed up. And birds are supposed to fly in the air, so if they're walking on the ground, you've got that mixture of categories that it's becomes unkosher and not to be eaten.
hmm.
No, anyway, that's the way we learn about it in Catholic seminary. Anyway,
Oh, interesting.
which actually gives you a nice helpful link from Leviticus back to Genesis, right? Because that's when Genesis 1 is where God's putting every creature into its proper place,
Mm.
and so it can make that those sometimes long passages of Leviticus a little more interesting
Yeah, I'm
when you can
finally.
actually get beyond just the details into the logos behind the law.
Yep, yep. I've finished reading Leviticus, and now I'm into Numbers in my daily readings, and
Nice.
it's like, oh, we're in Numbers. This feels like Leviticus.
Mhm. Are you
Yeah.
following like a reading plan, Valerie? Are
Yeah,
you okay?
yeah. I have YouVersion, which is a Bible app, and so every day I have like 5 or 6 or 7 different readings, some from Old Testament, some from New Testament, and Psalms and Proverbs. So just
Okay, that's cool.
yeah,
I've been
yeah.
doing the Bible in a Year podcast with my wife. Just
Oh,
starting
very
that
cool.
out. That's good because like I'm like when we were married, we were both atheists, and I was
Oh,
like a hardcore new atheist. So I'm the one who actually has changed over the 15 years.
aw.
So I can't blame her. So she's still the atheist, and I'm still that. But she's actually shown an interest. She wants to find out more. So she's like doing the Bible in a Year with me, and she's going to some of the we're doing it. There's one of the local parishes doing an Alpha course, so she's coming to some of the Alpha course with me too. So
What
that's
is an Alpha course?
it's a course. I think it's for as far as I understand, it's there may also be a Protestant version that is sort of it's the Catholic version of, but it's the idea is it's an introduction potentially for people who are thinking about becoming Christians, but it's also targeted at people who within the Catholic Church who haven't been well formed, like who want to find out more about the faith. And
Oh,
it's sort of it's supposed to offer a format where they focus on the hard questions and keep the floor open to asking lots of questions. And
oh, that's cool.
there's like I think 12 videos or 12 in this, at least the one we're doing, and there's like a video for each one, and they ask, and they're all framed within a question or a hard question of faith. So, and they encourage people to ask questions about this about the faith.
Yeah, that's cool. That's
Yeah.
neat. It, that's really cool that she's willing to go and check it out and kind of like
Yeah.
learn about it and stuff. No pressure or anything like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Well, it actually was a surprise to me because I hadn't actually initially I hadn't I thought she'd say no, or so I didn't even tell her that the course was coming up. And then it was someone else, one of the neighbors had invited her to an event at their church, like a women's event at their church, and she said yes to that, and she had a good time, and I was like, but I felt really like bad
Aw.
after that because I never even gave her the opportunity. I just assumed she'd say no, so I didn't even ask. So
Aw.
afterwards, I
Right.
did.
No, Sander,
Yeah.
here's what I'm really interested in. What does two atheists getting married look like? Like I'm talking about like the wedding ceremony itself.
Well, actually, we were married in Japan.
Okay.
So, in Japan, I think they do it. This is something I think that's admirable. And if you're going to have a secular government, I think this is the way you should do it. We actually just went down to the city hall and registered the marriage, and you didn't need an officiant or anyone else. If you wanted to do any sort of religious ceremony, that was, a completely separate, a complete separation from that
Mhm.
that experience. So we were married, and then we exchanged rings in the parking lot, and then we went on our honeymoon, right? And my parents came to Japan to sort of participate somewhat in the wedding. So it was pretty chill, and we sort of we took my parents on sort of this tour of Japan, and they were like enough because we had they had my dad rarely travels, so I had come up with this thing. Okay, how can I condense Japan into the 7 days that they're here, and then
Aw.
Yeah. Yeah.
over planned it, right?
Mhm.
Aw.
Mhm.
Yeah, but yeah. So that was basically it. So we had a purely secular, not much of a ceremony at all, and just started our marriage life. So
Wow.
that was it.
Interesting. Huh.
But I
It's
do like
cheap.
that. I just cheap. I do like that as sort of a way of resolving the issues we're having now of that separation. I think the government should just sort of see it as the government contract should just be
Mhm.
completely separated from
Yeah.
the religious aspects of it now, especially considering the way things have evolved with the same-sex couples and so forth and
Mhm.
all these issues. Just
I
complete
think I
separation
think
at this point.
that would that was would probably be more necessary in Canada than it
Yes.
is. We've got very robust freedom of religion so far, so
Mm.
far,
Yeah.
like better
Yeah.
than anywhere else in the world, as far as I can tell. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm less worried about it here. But yeah, if I was in Canada, I might be feeling the same way. Um, but it is a hassle for the couples when they have to do kind of the two stops or the two ceremonies thing here. And because I live in the great and brilliant and most excellent state of the North Dakota, because I am a Catholic priest, I don't. I am just in the eyes of the state automatically a a. I can sign the wedding license and it's just accepted just
Yeah.
because I'm a Catholic priest. Whereas my friends over in the degenerate communist state of Minnesota had to go and register at the county courthouse as an officiant of marriage.
Oh, really? Okay.
Mm.
So
Yeah. So here, I think you, I don't know if I don't know if the Catholic priests have to do anything, but you have to, you has your there has to be a ceremony that is presided over by an officiant. So the secular humanists have quite a grift going where they register as officiants
mhm.
for marriage in Ontario because you need to have a justice of the peace or a religious person or some. And I don't know. I don't know if the Ontario government makes you register beyond as an officiant officially, but I do know that there has to be someone who is recognized as an officiant has to
Mhm.
preside over the wedding
And in
here.
other parts of the world, like they won't, the government won't ever have a dual ceremony where when I marry somebody, it has both ecclesial and civil effects.
Hmm.
So that's great. They only have to do the one ceremony. There are some places, I think in Germany, for instance, that like if you're doing it in a church, the government will not recognize it at all. So you have to like stop at the courthouse in the morning and then in the afternoon get married in the church. which is just a pain in the butt for people. Getting
Mm.
married's complicated enough.
In Israel, it's actually the opposite. There is no secular marriage at all.
Mhm.
If you want to get married, you have to go to your religion, whatever, and it has to be one of the recognized religions, and get married. And otherwise, there is no marriage. And the secular people really hate that.
I
So
bet.
they leave the country to go get a secular marriage and come back because Israel will recognize those marriages.
Are there Reform synagogues in Israel?
Reform Judaism is not officially recognized as Judaism. Neither is conservative in Israel.
Okay.
Yeah.
That gives a little bit of context there, because it's like, you go to one of them Reform synagogues, that's basically a secular wedding.
Same.
At least that's what I've learned from you, Jacob. So
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm sure the Reform don't like me putting it that way, but in Israel, it's not actually considered Judaism. The Reform and conservative are not actually considered Judaism. So you could perform a marriage, whereas a Reform rabbi could not.
okay, interesting.
Because Roman Catholicism is one of I think there's like 16 official religions in Israel. And if you're not one of those religions, like, religion is actually pretty tightly. This has been part of the discussion we've been having because there's all kinds of political turmoil in Israel right now. Yeah.
As there is everywhere.
Yeah. I actually came on because I wanted to tell you a story, because I am hoping, I think his name was JD, is watching, because so this is what happened. I took Andrew to services with me on Friday, and after services, we went to dinner, and we're having pizza and having this discussion, normal discussion like we always do. And this guy comes up and says, I know this is really weird, but can I join your discussion because you're talking about all of my favorite things? Okay. Says, are you guys Lutheran? Like, no.
You're eating meat on a Friday during Lent, so you must be Lutheran.
So this was the thing. And so I offered him some pizza, and he said, actually, I'm fasting. So he was a TLM guy.
Oh,
yeah.
right.
So I invited him. So we had some discussion. He went to Notre Dame apparently, and I made him pull up your YouTube channel and subscribe, and told him about things. So I'm hoping he's watching, and so JD, if you're watching, you can click and come on here and say hi to Father Eric.
Okay, alrighty.
There you go.
I am planning on going out to California for the gathering in Chino, and I'm like, I wonder if there's a priestly fraternity of St. Peter Parish in the LA area. There has to be, right?
I'm sure.
it's like way up on the northern end of the LA sprawl. It's like an hour away from Chino, and I'm like, oh.
Well, everything is an hour away from Chino.
Okay.
Chino is in the middle of nowhere. And I'm wondering if there wouldn't be, Orange County is much more conservative than the rest of, like, if you go south of LA, I would expect you would find more.
Yeah, I just got to look at that Latin Mass locator and see if there's something a little closer than that.
Could I ask a question about the TLM politics, or
okay, you want to get into that? You want to get me into trouble, huh? Let's do it.
Well, I mean,
trouble.
Yeah, yeah. So that's the question. So I mean, I've just been tangentially orbiting the traditional circles, but I think that there has just been another a document put up by the Vatican, someone within the Vatican. I think he's the ecclesiastical guy who's just confirming, or who's basically trying to close. It's
Yeah, yeah. So
closing the
I
loopholes
think I
and
know what you're
allowing Latin
talking
mass.
about.
Yeah.
So, this is a time where we get to talk about canon law. I know you are all really hoping that this would happen, and so here we go. Uh,
So a quick question: what is TLM?
Oh,
Traditional
traditional
Latin Mass.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, that's. I didn't know a week ago either. So, or a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
All righty, here we go. So, actually, we're not ready for that yet. We'll remove that yet. So summer of 2021, Pope Francis issues a legal document heavily restricting the use of the traditional Latin Mass.
Mhm.
Very sad, very sad.
Yeah.
But there was a very well thought out canon in the Code of Canon Law. So one of the restrictions that he put on there is that if you have a parish church, that you are not supposed to have the Latin Mass there.
At
All
all.
right.
So it's not
Yeah.
even it can be like a secondary mass that you offer.
Nope,
Right.
you're not supposed to have that at all. So there were some people who didn't like this law and doesn't think that this sort of thing should be managed by a bureaucrat thousands of miles away in Rome. And they came to beautiful and sensible Canon 87. A diocesan bishop, whenever he judges that it contributes to their spiritual good, is able to dispense the faithful from universal and particular disciplinary laws issued for his territory as his subjects by the supreme authority of the church. He is not able to dispense, however, from procedural or penal laws, nor from those whose dispensation is specifically reserved to the apostolic see or some other authority. So what does this say? This says that if there's a universal law that is not a procedural law, right? So the procedural law is that protects your rights in a trial,
Mhm.
right? Or a penal law that establishes that something is a canonical crime. So Bishop Butterpants can't say that this this priest doesn't have right to due process,
Mhm.
or he can't say, oh, that's not a canonical crime in my diocese. But other
Yeah.
than that, or something whose dispensation is specially reserved to the apostolic see or some other authority. So no, you have to ask permission for this. So this document that was written in the summer of 2021, Mark Lefebvre, the brilliant YouTube channel Navigating Patterns, would hate it because it would remind him of sloppy programming and just how badly it was written. And it did not specifically reserve dispensations to the Pope. So there was bishops all over the place dispensing it, saying, no, you could do it in the parish church. I'm using
Yes.
Canon 87, which is in the Code of Canon Law, to dispense you of that. So recently, our Cardinal Roach got a new law passed saying, oh, yeah, this is actually reserved to the apostolic see.
So apparently there is a Latin Mass church, St. Vitus, FSSP, in the Valley, which, is...
I saw that one. That's like an hour-long drive. So
Yeah, that's because you're going into Los Angeles. But it's... The Valley is actually in Los Angeles, whereas Chino's out in the middle of nowhere.
Okay.
mhm.
Yeah.
So, Xander, does that help you answer your question there?
It helps me answer it. So but I think so the question is now: is there another avenue that bishops are using to justify allowing Latin masses now? Or
So
are we sort of-
what you can do is you can move it into so there's several places where you'll still be able to find it. Some places you can actually get that dispensation where Cardinal Roach in his graciousness and his mercy is allowing the ancient liturgical rites to continue to exist. If you go to a priestly fraternity of St. Peter Parish, their mission appears to be entirely unaffected. And if you can find a suitable location to have it that is not a parish church, then you don't need a dispensation. So right now, the Latin Mass community in Fargo is celebrating at the local Catholic high school chapel.
Oh wow, okay. That's
Um,
interesting. Okay.
So I would be curious to see what your people, and here's a fact that people don't talk about in the church enough, is that sometimes people just do what they want, and
Yeah.
maybe sometimes in the long run they're right,
or
and other times they're horribly wrong.
horribly
So-
wrong. Actually, I have one of those horribly wrong ones. I can share a link if you want to.
Oh,
I get you in more trouble. I don't.
there was somebody in BOM in the Catholic chat that's like, hey, is it normal for the priest to meow for 3 minutes during his homily?
Mm.
And I was like, I've never done that. I could see maybe doing it once. And even then, it's kind of, I don't know. So anyway, apparently somebody's mother, fallen away Catholic, was giving mass a try again. And the priest meowed for, and I'll pull up the quote here, but they said 3 minutes during mass.
He just continued to meow for 3 minutes.
What is a song?
No.
Because there's a song from a movie or something of some
Okay.
choir boy singing meow. It's really funny.
Here's the quote. During the sermon, the priest meowed like a cat on and off for 3 minutes or so. Needless to say, any feeling of spiritual emptiness was not filled that day, and I don't see my mother attending another service.
Yeah,
That's why you need spiritual malpractice insurance.
that's actually like I don't have as dramatic a story, but it was homily malpractice or malevolence that caused me to switch parishes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but because that's the thing is like I find that it is the people who are quickest to cite the fact that attendance is down in churches because as the need for reformation and change, who are also the ones who are causing the problem in the first place because of things like meowing in mass, right? Like, like it's like, oh, we've caused this crisis, and no one wants to go to church anymore. Clearly, we need more change, right?
We need more puppets. We need more clowns. We need more balloons.
Yeah.
We need more guitars and bongos.
Yeah. Smoke machines.
Smoke machines.
Apparently that's the thing part of.
We already have smoke machines.
Oh, okay. We need more of them then.
Yeah, the
Yes, we do. They're called therables.
Yeah,
They're called therables.
the
That's our
OG
smoke
smoke
machine.
machines.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
the OG
yes,
smoke machines.
Yeah.
We've been doing that way.
The
before
analog,
any of
the
big
analog
boxes of
smoke
those.
machine.
Analog smoke machines. Oh, that's the way to put it. Analog smoke machines. Vinyl smoke machine. No, that's not quite right.
Have you heard of repressive tolerance before? Herbert Marcuse? Marcuse? That's what when I hear about them going so hard against the Latin Mass and then allowing meowing in the pulpit. That's what it
Nice,
reminds me of it, right? Like that's sort of the
Yeah.
that sounds like repressive tolerance to me. It sounds like it's like an orchestra that some people may have an underlying agenda to the way that they are.
It's like they actually, like if you were just to analyze their actions, you would get the sense that they actually wanted this to become a smoking crater with nothing in it, right? Because that's exactly what their actions lead to. So yeah, don't. If somebody's doubling down on something in the church that isn't working and is actively driving people away, then you don't pay attention to what they're saying anymore. You just pay attention to what they're doing.
Yeah.
Because what they're saying they want and what they're actually doing are completely disconnected.
Yeah.
And the one that's hurting people is what they're doing, not what they're saying.
I think that Christ might have said something along the lines of from their fruit shall ye know them.
Right.
Which I think is actually where a lot of the the whole justification through faith to justification through actions debate comes from. And sort of my resolution to that is I think from what I've read in the Bible and what my interpretation is quite clear is that ultimately it's the Protestants are right, although they're being a little pedantic when they're saying that it's purely justification of faith, and that's because Christ knows our hearts, right? Ultimately, he knows our hearts, but it is
Well, and the Council of Trent, the anti-Protestant Council of Trent, said that faith is the root and source of all justification.
Yeah.
So it's like that's what's at the base. That's what you start from.
Yeah.
And then all of the other good works are supposed to flow through that spiritual life.
and that was where I was going, is that we're not Christ, and Christ makes that clear, is that we're supposed to judge by acts because we don't have the divine access to other minds we cannot see the hearts of other people like Christ can. So we do the second best thing and read people by their actions, see them by their fruit, see them by judge their faith indirectly through their actions.
And so I see the church. Oh, speaking of the traditional Latin Mass, got another trad on board.
Oh, there we go.
Hi-ho.
We got,
yeah, I think you basically got the faith thing right. The faith is sort of where all the good works come from. But what I want to look at is fruit bearing over time, which some people might call that a Darwinian analysis, but we could also call it common sense. Is that if okay, so you're baby Catholic, Xander.
Mhm.
You were baptized just about a year ago,
Yeah.
right?
Coming up on a year.
Coming out of new atheism.
There was a trip through Buddhism there too. Like we're talking, there was a 10-year journey from new atheist to Catholic.
Yeah. And then you're, I think rather correctly, identifying spiritual malpractice, which, it might not be a grave sort of thing that we need to write the bishop about, but, something goofy where you're like, I don't think that's right. Is that basically what you encountered?
Oh, what I encountered was, I would actually say I would prefer, I would have probably, I walked out on communion, even though I was the, I was the lector, and that was, I did that because what I heard, I would have preferred if the priest meowed, honestly, because what I heard, it was nerdy theological, which is why I think a lot of people just let it slide. But for Lent, I felt it was completely inappropriate, because he was basically denying he reframed sin and inversed the whole concept of sin in his homily. Did so in a very sly manner. So I don't. Yeah, but that was basically it, but it culminated in that the Lenten spirit is we should really fast from self-criticism. is where the homily ended up. So I was like, yeah.
Yeah. So the point is, you hear that from the pulpit, something
Yeah.
that's just kind of not quite right.
Yeah.
That drives you away into what? Another parish, right?
Yes.
So do you think you're the only person making that kind of a movement?
No, I think I'm the only one who was bold enough to actually just walk out on the the mass.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So first off, what you're doing is you're sending a signal back to that priest, right? So that's actually really useful, because a lot of people are too scared to send signals. Signals are important, because otherwise you have no idea what's going on. And you're also, contributing to the life of a new parish. You're taking care of yourself. I mean,
Yeah.
So it's and then if you do that often enough, you repeat that cycle often enough, eventually you end up with X parish dying and the other parish thriving.
And that's
and
what's
that
happening.
could even happen in dioceses, and that could even happen in regions, right?
Yeah, we one of the local Novus Ordo parishes around here. The it's just been interesting to see over the last 12 months as a new priest has been there. It's just like just packed to the walls now, and he takes things very seriously and has really good, just very like solid homilies, and it's just interesting to see, it's like, where are these people coming from? They're, it's not like the town is growing, there's 5,000 people in the town or less, probably less than that. And it's like, but people are hiking from 30 minutes away. Just like, hey, the mass here is reverent. Like, this is, so yeah, you can see that really clearly.
There's hunger for it. There's hunger for it. I was doing spiritual direction for a young father who was contemplating moving parishes here in Fargo on that sort of thing, and eventually, I haven't talked to him recently, but he has been kind of creeping in that direction. He wants the more reverent worship, and he knows where he can get it. But he wanted to try and like move the needle at his current parish, and what we could say, the immune system of that body rejected him. I don't know. You can put it into that way. Because it does, when you come in and change those things, especially if you're trying to go at it from the bottom up, which isn't always bad, but or more difficult than it needs to be, is that you are making a change to the identity in that. Like once you make a change to worship, you make a change to identity. I don't see how you can get away from that. And that's why all this traditional Latin Mass stuff is so controversial, because they made a huge, like not just like an adjustment or a tinkering or a tweak. They made a huge change to it. And a lot of people, like on levels that they aren't able to consciously articulate, say, this was a change in identity.
Yeah.
Oh.
I was just at Mass this morning. I was thinking about the relationship between that sort of, cumulative practice of acts and the way that corresponds so directly to like learning an instrument or learning to operate a machine, and how you move from that unconscious to conscious operation, conscious to unconscious operation. You're exactly right, Father. I mean, you start getting into, when you start changing, I mean, there's a reason that stuff hits people so deep, because it's not, you start to internalize that stuff so deeply, and then you're going out through your life with those internalized patterns that you've been hammering in through, weekly or daily Mass, and then you start saying, hey, we need to change that. Hey, you can't do that. Hey, you need to do it this way. And then all of a sudden people are like, whoa, why do I feel like things are being violated and changed here on a level I don't understand? Yeah. But the great thing is that if those are good things, then you start being able, you pick those up and they become subconscious operations in your own life, in the same way that when you're really proficient in an instrument or operating a machine or, any of those things, you don't have to think, how am I playing the scale? How am I articulating the joint on this excavator? It just happens. And sort of that level of agency moves up. And,
you could, like celebrating really Mass, I could start figuring out, oh, my microphone's not working. How am I going to deal with that while I'm still doing all the Mass stuff, which happened tonight. My microphone.
Aww.
So I had to pivot there.
So I've been like looking under, I guess, all the carpets during Lent. So I have another question that'll potentially get you in trouble.
All right. The bishop doesn't watch this, so I should be good to go.
Third Fatima revelation or third Fatima mystery.
Yeah, I don't have a strong opinion on that one. Okay. Because right?
Well, could you
traditional Latin Mass, traditional Latin Mass, that's something that can actually affect my day-to-day living.
Yes.
So I have to come to a decision on that. Right? This whole third secret of Fatima thing, like what the controversy is that the Vatican hasn't released the full text of the third secret of Fatima, right?
Yes. So I understand that they were supposed to in 1960, and Pope John the 23rd
read it and said no.
Right? And it was just before he was planning for Vatican II.
Right.
and he was very concerned about the geopolitical situation.
Right.
And it was probably, and there was something about it that was overtly political and anti-communist.
Sure. Yeah.
And so it wasn't until
90 something.
it was the year 2000, and it's sort of
Okay.
a significant date because there is, what's his name, a priest who is a Jesuit priest, and because of hearing the third Fatima mystery, he was there as a translator, so he heard it and he was interpreting for the other cardinals, and he because of that he actually and because of Pope John's 23rd's decision, he lost faith in the Jesuit order and asked to be released from his vows and became a popular Catholic writer.
Okay.
And he died in 1999, but he had warned that, you know, he would honor the Pope's decision, but if anyone ever actually put out if the Vatican dared to put out the mystery incomplete or inaccurately, then he would actually reveal what the proper text was.
And so the way I approach that, and maybe you won't like this,
Okay.
is that if I knew for a fact,
Yes.
with 100% certitude, that the Vatican had released only an incomplete text to the Third Secret of Fatima, I don't think I'd actually be doing anything different right now.
Mm-hmm. I don't think
I
you can.
would-
I think it's lost to time.
Yeah.
Because if it, whatever it was, and this is, I was actually like I learned about this about the time that I was reading that text about Susanna, that I think that really Mary put John the 23rd to that test of like, whether are you going to follow the word of God, or are you going to follow the worldly geopolitical situation? And he made his decision, and we live with the repercussions of that.
Sure,
Right?
sure.
So once
Yeah,
after 90
because
after yeah.
we didn't consecrate the Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary in 1960.
Yeah.
So, but then we did in 2021 or 22.
Yeah. No, but
You
it's yeah.
Anyway,
if you show up to the
yeah.
exam like 60 years later, it doesn't necessarily count.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know what to make of all that stuff. And so I just go like, I don't think I'd be doing anything differently if I knew that. So,
No, I think that's fair, and I think
Yeah.
that's the right decision. Like honestly,
like I'm not gonna divide, like cause divisions over church over something in a private revelation, which is what the Fatima is.
Yeah.
It's not a part of the deposit of faith. So
So what it was? Could you tell me a bit more about the Fatima story, if you know?
Oh, sure. Yeah, there was the three Portuguese shepherd children who were, this was 1917, literally 1917. And the Blessed Virgin Mary just starts appearing to them, right, while they're out tending their flocks in Portugal. And starts, doing regular Blessed Virgin Mary shows up kind of things, right? Telling them that they need to pray the rosary, telling them that they need to go to confession, telling them that they need to attend Mass every Sunday, promoting First Saturday devotions, those sorts of things. Regular old bread and butter Marian apparitions. You guys straighten things out. Had some interesting things to say about immodest fashions that would be sweeping things. But then there's these three secrets, right?
Father, can we book? I want to come back to that. Anyway, finish this, but I've got some interesting things about fashion that I'd love to come back to when we
Sure.
get the chance.
Sure. And so the first two secrets are relatively uncontroversial and were released on time. One of them was like a vision of hell, and I can't remember the second one. But the third one involved, oh gosh, was that in the text of the third secret or not? No, I can't remember. Anyway, what Mary wanted the Pope to do was to consecrate Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, and that would have all the bishops in the world do that. So this is in 1917, and Mary said something like, Russia will propagate her errors throughout the whole world unless this happens.
The errors,
Like,
implying communism. And
Communism, and
given where we are now,
any forms of the metastasized Marxism that have
Yeah.
spread throughout the body of the world.
that
which
is a
were
quite apt way of
inspired-
putting it. I don't know
Yeah,
if you're quoting.
it's a metastasized
Marxism.
Marxism. It's a cancer that
Mhm.
has learned how to infect different parts of the body there.
Absolutely.
With all that stuff there. So anyway, point is that I'm not the Pope and I'm not a bishop and I can't do much about this. So I'm just going to
Yeah.
try and be a good priest in North Dakota.
And this is the thing too. Like even then, like ultimately the Pope is a man, and if you are, I think if you're a good Catholic, it's not the first time. Like it's not the first time a man has failed us. I mean,
Put
our
no
whole
trust in
religion-
princes, immortal men in whom there is no help. Take
Oh,
their
okay.
breath, they return to clay, and their plans that day come for nothing. You ever heard that one before, Jacob?
I know where that's from. I think.
רבות מחשבות בלב איש ועצת השם היא תקום. Yes, I know it by heart in Hebrew.
Okay,
Is that
good.
the Stonecutters? Or is that something else?
No, you're thinking of a different verse.
Okay.
That verse, I mean, many are the plans in the heart of man, but the counsel of God shall be established.
Okay.
All righty, Ted, talk to us about fashion because I don't have
Yeah.
to dress myself anymore. I just wear a uniform. It's great.
And I'll tell you, like, it's a regular source of envy that I don't get to just dress like a priest. Like, I'll just, cards on the table. But I was part of this. Part of this is just like some slow churn stuff in my head. But then, let's see, Friday, I guess I listened to that Jordan Peterson podcast on birth rates and demographics. I don't know if anyone else listened to that. And I'd actually, that stuff has been bumping around for a while recently. And, lots of like 2022 totals have come up, like Japan having twice as many deaths as Latvia having the same, Poland's population decreased last year. I mean, just like pretty crazy stuff. And so then I got in a conversation with some friends of mine who are not Catholic, and we were talking, and they had some questions about the Blessed Virgin Mary, and all this stuff about like her being veiled has been something that's been in my head a lot. And so anyway, all this stuff kind of works together. And I was thinking about how we have these things that are related to human procreation, and what we've done in the last 100 years on an absolutely unprecedented scale is to take those things pertaining to matrimony and reproduction and have completely uncovered them. Right. And so I think Pajot probably brought this up at some point, that like even the house has that same structure as the temple, right? Where you've got the outer courts and the inner courts and the holy place and the holy of holies. And there's these increasing degrees of intimacy, right? And like in a properly ordered household, the parents' bedroom is the holy of holies. And like, that is where life comes from. And that is the place that is the absolutely most restricted in terms of access. Like, right, you invite your dearest friends to come and eat at your table. You don't invite your dearest friends to come and sleep in your bed.
Yeah.
And so there's this sense of when you take pornography and then all the associated just depictions of that, and we don't even call pornography anymore. And then also in terms of modesty and the way we present our bodies like in the world, when you blow all that out there, when you take all those veils, you rip the veil there, you bring all this to bear, the counterintuitive result is not that people start reproducing more. It's actually that it sterilizes the world.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Like,
Because you're separating these things from their proper teleology.
Yeah.
Yes. And so it's been fascinating to me how little in the discourse of demography do you see anything discussed about porn, except with the rare exception of Japan, honestly. And like, I've kind of had my eye on this, and like, you can go back and read these studies of like, where people actually look at why young Japanese don't have relationships of any kind. And it's like, it's the fact that there's just this like way to rip the curtain off of all of that. And then you don't have to go any further. And there's no relational negotiation. There's no dealing with the troublesomeness. That was like the most chilling, like the word, like these things are too bothersome to deal with. Any rate, so that just like thinking about this connection between like this like to the world, I guess, counterintuitive connection between modesty and fertility is really like, it's got stuff going in my head.
I don't actually think it's that counterintuitive. Like it's only counterintuitive to our, I don't want to say even modern, but our post-sexual revolution sensibilities, right?
Mhm,
That, like,
mhm.
and I think like the ultimate sin of the 60s was that we didn't that they didn't appreciate, because they had grown up in this world where so much had been taken care of, and like it's continued on. But I think the 60s where this it really hit, it first bit, was this idea that um, because they had a well-ordered society, they just assumed that was like, they took it for granted, like fish take
Yes.
water for granted, right?
Yes.
That
Yes.
the well-ordered society was presented to them, and so they thought that they were always thinking about tweaking these other problems, right? They were always thinking about all these other so they could look forward and think about racism or feminism and all these other things,
Mhm.
because they figured like, oh yeah, making food, procreating, having sanitation system, having an economy
It takes
that
care of
works,
itself.
it takes care of itself. This is all
Yeah.
solved problems. We don't have to do any effort for this, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's the fundamental problem, is that we've taken our eye off of the ball because of these, and we don't realize like how hard a trick it is to have well-ordered families and make and cultivate and have families that produce not just
Yeah.
men and women, but men and women of good character. That's a really hard thing to do, and you
That
can't
pursuit
have
of virtue.
a complex society unless you have men and women of good character, right? Because you can't
Yeah.
rely on
Yeah. I mean,
them. Yeah.
yeah, there's so much there. I mean, and part of that is, I think, again, sort of a recurring theme around here is this, like, the need for interfacing with sort of material reality in an actual sense. It's weird that like materialism keeps you away from material reality in some sense, but that when you start doing those things and you start, like, I don't know, trying to grow your own food or trying to raise children, all of a sudden you realize, hey, it's not a given that these are going to turn out well. And then it does this amazing flip on history where you realize, well, history wasn't this like inevitable thing that everything was just going to turn out fine. Like, we're still around and we still have a civilization because like so many people woke up every day and did the right thing enough. And frankly, I mean, it's a lot like Chesterton's description of orthodoxy, where he's like, people think of orthodoxy as this like stable, boring thing, where really it's this like chariot race, where you're like always just like staying right on the right track, and how, yeah, exactly. And so, and I think
he described it as a carriage being pulled by galloping horses that's constantly on the brink of teetering one way or the other.
Yeah, yeah. And so I think you can take that out from Orthodox theology and even to more like society more broadly, and realize, in one sense, the profound heroism of just keeping things together. Like, I remember talking to this one time I was up in New York visiting when my brother was living there, and I was talking to this guy who was basically like a civil engineer up there, and he's describing to me them like maintaining the sewer systems in New York. He's like, yeah, so we're doing this one temporary diversion tunnel here so that we can hopefully like expand the capacity of this other tunnel before it collapses and we have like a total sewage, and he starts describing this. I'm like, hold on, you're telling me that like the sewer in New York doesn't just work. It's like guys like you that get up every day and are like, all right, we got to figure this out. Otherwise, like 2 million people's toilets are backing up next week. And it's like, that's actually reality. And the same goes for all the mundane things of taking care of your household, taking care of your children, doing your job. And it's like, I mean, frankly, that should be really exciting and also terrifying, but mostly exciting.
And I think that's actually part of the spiritual danger of fashions, right? Because we go immediately to like immodest fashions. Okay, fair enough. But it's also like things that are fashionable are always ephemeral, right? They're trying to get you to like chase after this spirit, which is almost by definition completely fleeting, right? So like I remember 10 years ago what the fashionable haircuts are. Do you remember 10 years ago what the fashionable haircuts were? when you shave it up real close on the side, and then it's really long on top, and it just kind of flops down all over the place, right? I never went for that, right? And I see the fashionable haircuts now, and now perms are back in, right? And I'm sure you've seen those punk kids running around with the perms. They look like a bunch of poodles, right? And
Yeah.
TikTok is literally like a fashion, like I don't even like a
On
strobe
crack.
light for fashions. It's just
Yeah,
going
like
so
fashion on crack.
yeah. And what that literally does is it just gets you into a position where you are not focusing on those things that are actually lasting and that actually matter, which are spiritual matters. Neutrino, yes, always in style, bald and a beard is the new style. Okay, whatever you say, Pastor. Yeah. So anyway, it's not even just a matter of like the fashions, all the fashions. It's not even like it's more than just the lust and the detachment.
So, Father Eric, if I just send like a link to one of the Divine Mercy images, or Divine Mercy image,
Sure.
like one
Which
version,
Divine Mercy image do you want? Do you want the good one or do you want the not good one?
the best one, the good one, if you have it. But it's I have a link to one that I thought was pretty good, one copy of it. If you could bring it up, because I wanted to, it really connected to think something Ted said. Both you and Ted were talking about with the J.R. Chesterton, and did I say that right?
Can you see that down there?
GK. It's GK Chesterton.
Yeah, GK
Gilbert Keith. Yeah.
Is that the one we're
Gilbert
looking
Keith.
for?
Yeah, that's good enough.
Okay.
I think the one I had was better, but this is good enough.
Okay. It's not the one where Jesus is wearing eyeliner. That's what I'm mostly about.
Oh no, it's the same one as this one. It's just sort of like a prettier, but it has all the elements I need to make my point.
All
So
right.
you're talking about the chariot and sort of staying on the track. This is actually what I see in the Divine Mercy images is a representation of the Holy Spirit and the two aspects of the Holy Spirit, which are mercy and which I think are mercy and zeal, right? So, which is the water and the blood,
Mhm.
right? So the water is the mercy, and the blood is the zeal, and what they do and what the Holy Spirit does is it guides us. It keeps us on the narrow path. It guides us to Christ. By keeping that equilibrium between mercy and zeal, right? So we're not so zealous that we're becoming fanatical and falling off the way, and we're not so merciful that our brain falls out, right? And we're
Right.
and we're meowing in the pews, meowing at in the pulpit, right? Because everything is love, right? So those are sort of the rails, and I sort of like envision it like I don't know if you have this American. You Americans and your highways. I don't know if you do this yet, but in Canada, a lot of our highways now they have these sound things. So if you're driving at night,
Rumble strips.
the rumble
strips.
strips, and so if you start to go off the narrow path, then you get hit the rumble strip, and it's sort of and you can hear the noise, and you come back on the strap, and that's what I see. Like the Divine Mercy is showing us the rumble strips of mercy and zeal, right?
Mhm.
So it's sort of like, if you start going too far into zeal, well, maybe you should be a little merciful. And if you start going too far into mercy, it's time for a little more zeal. It's time to get back to that Latin Mass, right? Like time to get
And
back
so
to
this
basics.
This is the way that Peugeot says it's been historically represented. Did you ever see that stuff about the right hand and the left hand?
Yeah. Oh, this
Like
is
the
actually
left
always
hand.
my big takeaway from Thunder Bay was right hand and left hand.
The left hand is stiff. It's written. Everything is decreed, and the right
Judgment.
hand is flexible and can extend to incorporate mercy. So,
And Father, are you familiar with that? It's like the earliest icon of Christ that it's like 5th century, 6th century, and it's got like both sides of his face are painted very differently.
yes.
Yeah. Those at a friend's house, and I was looking at it 2 days ago.
Yeah, that would freak me out when it's like as a kid because my parents just had it on their refrigerator. It was like some like they sent money to somebody and they got a free magnet, you know, and
Yeah.
I'm just sitting there looking at it, and
That's quite the manga.
you know, my dad, he could teach us like the seven sacraments and our prayers and right from wrong, which is the bread and butter and absolutely what we needed. But like he wasn't able to explain that one. Why is Jesus, you know?
Yeah,
like
yeah, it's
that,
almost like it's like yeah. So is judgment and mercy even in his face, which is
human and divine. That's what it's trying to explicate.
well. So Andrew, I've heard that too. I just jump back at that because I'm like, but he's not like half and half. That's the part that
Yeah.
It's actually Jesus is the resolution of the problem, right? So like what like
Yes,
there's
yeah.
three theological virtues. There's hope, faith, and charity. And of the greatest of the three, 1 Corinthians 13, is charity, right? Because like this is where you get the whole God is love thing, is because you need to resolve the problem between the man and the divine, right? The practical situation. Do I get my calf out of the well because it's going to violate the divine law, right? So and Jesus resolves that problem. Of course, you know, you get your sheep out of the well, but you still try and honor the honor the Sabbath. You know, you falter during your Lent like Father Eric and myself have done, but you get back up and you keep on trying to honor your Lenten commitments, right? So that's that resolution between the man and the divine, the particular and the theoretical, right? Or that's the hope and the faith. And this is like I think what one of the biggest misconceptions, and I definitely counted myself as my from the new atheist days. Misconceptions about faith is that people will often try and rarefy faith into this really abstract thing, right? Where it's sort of like, oh, it's only for things you have no evidence of. That's all what faith is. But I think what faith actually is connects back to what Father Eric was talking about from the fruits that you know. It's your practices. Your faith is what you do every day. That's why my daily prayer is my faith, right? When I go on a rosary walk, that's the test. That's testing my faith. That's my faith, right? Am I actually practicing and demonstrating what I believe? And that's what faith is the practice.
Xander, we found him. We found the guy who doesn't falter during Lent, and his name is Mark Lefebvre. Because he didn't give up anything.
Give up nothing.
Oh,
Mark,
yeah.
Can confirm.
Can confirm. Bruce, did you give up anything for Lent?
No, I'm a Reformed Baptist. I do all things for the glory of God.
Okay.
Does that mean like it's always Lent, or?
That's right. It is. Thank God.
There you go.
Are you of the sort of Baptist persuasion that frowns upon the alcohol that Xander's drinking right now because it's Sunday during Lent?
Yeah.
No, I'm of the Baptist persuasion that drinks a lot of scotch and smokes a lot of cigars. For the glory of God.
All righty. I think I can deal with that. You can drink scotch. What is it? Chesterton said, we thank God for beer and Burgundy by not drinking too much of them.
That's right. Amen.
That's the whole Pints and Aquinas is based on cigars and liquor, right?
Yep,
That's the most
yep,
popular.
Definitely got
The wine makes the heart glad. You know what I mean? That's what
I
Scripture
know
says.
exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
Back
I mean,
Jacob's Island there, they just celebrated, what is that? Is it
Purim.
Purim,
Yes.
right? Where it's like a divine obligation to get hammered.
Mm-hmm.
Well-
It is Jewish law. It is required of all adult males to drink to the point where they no longer can tell the difference between Mordecai was good and Haman was bad.
That sounds sensible to me.
wow. Which tradition is this? What is it called again?
Orthodox Judaism.
What? No, I mean like which
Purim,
particular?
It's based on the Book of
Purim.
Esther.
Okay.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. But within that, that's actually. So here's something that I think is, and this is why why Vatican II is sort of important for. So, and I don't want to say the Vatican II is all bad because I don't think it is.
Because it's not, and I
But
will
it's not.
fight you
It's
on
not.
that. And I
I'm
will
not.
win.
I don't. You will, but I do think that it did compromise the immune system of the Catholic Church against the Marxist cultists, against communism, and
Sure.
and that was but there were good reforms too within the Vatican II,
Yeah.
right? So and I think whatever I'm not going to go and sidelining what I really want to get to. My point here is that one of the key things the Catholics have is communion, and communion is so important because it's not a propositional presentation of biblical truth. It is a performative presentation of biblical truth. I don't know which one of Vervaeke's 4 Ps it is, but it's one of the other ones besides propositional. But because what you're doing is so symbolic, it shows the biblical truth in a way that it's really hard for the Marxists to get against, and so the mixing of wine and of water and wine, and the presentation of the Eucharist, these because it's not so driven by words, but driven by action and symbols. It's hard. It's difficult to refute propositionally, and the evil wizards like to use words to refute things. I don't. There's a lot there. I don't know if that actually came out in any way remotely eloquent, but
No. It's the power of symbolism over words, because it can invite participation in a way that a whole bunch of words just can't. Basically.
yeah. But it's also it can't be contradicted in the way words can be contradicted. Like it's deeply meaningful that we take part in communion, right? And we all go up there and take part in the body of
communion
Christ.
comes out of a gold vessel and not
Yes.
individually wrapped plastic
And
things.
it shows
Yeah,
us that
yeah.
separation of the body of Christ and the blood of Christ, right?
Mhm.
The blood being the Holy Spirit, and the body being the good, the true, and the beautiful, right? That which is that cannot be defined but only discerned. That gives us the
That's
way
a,
the way of life, the
That's
way,
a
the truth,
new
and life.
expression. I've never heard anybody say it, so I'll have to think about that.
Yeah, mull it over.
I have
But
a natural Roman suspicion of anything new.
it's healthy. But
Yeah.
I promise not to put any pig hearts over the altar.
Okay,
I was
good.
so at mass this morning. I was thinking about, obviously with it being Lent, like praying through the sorrowful mysteries for every rosary. And we've been doing, and so all that's right here, and the priest is coming with the host in that golden cup, and I was like, oh, that's the cup that Christ said, if it can pass from me, let it pass. And like, because it didn't pass from him, like, here we are receiving his life.
Mm.
That's true. I never made that connection. That's a really interesting one. That's really good. It's a good next time I go through that mystery in the in the rosary, I'll think of it from that perspective, meditate on it from that perspective. Yeah.
I want to ask you to render judgment on that, Father Eric. I just presented as a possible symbolic meditation.
Yeah. No, I won't render a final judgment on it.
Pass on. This cup can pass from me.
Yeah, but because he didn't pass on it, he drank from it.
Yeah.
Mm.
Here it is for us to participate in. Yeah.
Alrighty.
Well, because that's the holy. Because this is actually one of the things is Christ's gift to us, like the Messiah's gift to us, was the Holy Spirit, and that's, I think, what the blood of Christ, like what the cup represents, is the Holy Spirit, right? The gift of the Holy Spirit, and that's ultimately, like, that's what that connects us. Like, that's why Christ becomes like the fulfillment of the law, because previously we needed like the full law of Abraham, right, with all the little particulars. in
Careful
that.
now. Careful now. You're right next to a son of Abraham there.
Yeah, I know. I was.
He's holding himself back admirably.
But yeah, but that's the idea of the fulfillment of the law, the Holy Spirit connecting us, that so we can we can know the mind of God when we come into those particular situations, right? That we actually have this direct connection that Christ is provided us. The what would Jesus do factor, you could
What
say.
would Jesus do factor? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, hey Chad,
There.
Hiya.
how's did you guys get buried with snow out there?
A little bit, yeah. Not much. Not too bad though. Thursday night into Friday morning, I don't know. It's like 6 inches of pretty wet snow and shoveled it up, which wasn't too bad. Got a nice shovel, and then went to a men's retreat over the weekend. That was absolutely needed.
Good. Yeah. Nothing like a good retreat to get you away from all the hurly-burly.
Well, it was just good to. There was 80 of us there.
Wow.
It was good, and we're all in the same meetings and stuff, and so it was good to. We had panels where we participate on the panels, and it's real vivid, and it was really beautiful. It was unbelievable. So it's much. We do it every year. It's a thing.
Mm-hmm. Good. And Andrew's getting a well-balanced breakfast right there.
Everything a man needs.
Is this
The thing is, Andrew's like 2 miles north of me, but it seems like it's a lot lighter where he is than I am. Did the sun go down like to the north? I don't get it.
I know I don't.
It's because you're inside and he's outside probably.
I'm looking outside. It's a lot darker. I don't know. I think it's his camera.
No. You guys have been getting hammered with rain too out there in California, right?
Yeah, thank God. I mean, we need it. So.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Bruce, what part of the United States do you hail from?
I'm on the eastern shore of Maryland on the Chesapeake Bay.
Lovely.
Yeah, it's nice. It's a little cold. We're getting like winter will not stop. It's like this. I mean,
Yes,
it's not
I
terrible
understand.
compared to places like where Chad is up in Wisconsin or wherever, but it's just that it's that constant wind, wet, cold spring, and we're just looking forward to the sun. You know what I mean? Looking forward to the spring and the real summer. So yeah, it's not great.
Yeah.
Y'all are making me so grateful for the South. I love the South. I'm like,
Yeah, we're
The red
technically
belt.
in the South. We're below the Mason-Dixon.
you guys are like Yankee Southerners, basically.
Yeah, I'm a Yankee. I'm from New York, but I live down here,
Okay, there you
and
go.
yeah, we get like the worst of all of it, but never the extreme. But we get all of the the Mid-Atlantic here gets just all of the possible seasons. You know what I mean? There's no missing out, which I do enjoy. It's great to have different seasons, but yeah, we had church today was a long service, and I got home and I was trying to finish this pergola that I was building, and I was just getting beat up by the wind, But so I loved the long service because it was so gross outside.
What is a pergola?
A gazebo, it's like a
Oh, gazebo.
yeah. Either way, it's kind of a similar structure.
Onset.
So like a shelter where you can sit and chill in the back.
Yeah, I built it so I could have my smoker out there and not get pelted by the rain. But
Solid.
yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say I've been following a meteorologist YouTuber named Ryan Hall, and he forecasted, where he said like halfway through February that the polar vortex was dying down and that March was going to be miserable.
Oh,
And
well,
turns out he was 100% correct, because the polar vortex keeps us all safe and happy by keeping all that Arctic air wrapped up on the North Pole, and when it breaks down, it just ruins March.
yeah.
I'm not bitter.
Oh my goodness! I don't know.
You're in North Dakota, is that right?
Yeah. We're supposed to be, averaging about 42 degrees this year, or this time of year, and it's not getting above freezing.
Yeah, that's no fun. That's no fun. North Dakota has a rough weather pattern.
Well, it's because the jet stream directs Arctic air right down through where I live, basically. Whereas if you go like 4 hours west, it's consistently quite a bit warmer.
Yeah.
Ah,
I mean, you read like those later Little House books and the stuff that they're, them trying to survive those Dakota winters and uninsulated houses and coal stoves, and you're just like, this sounds like. I mean, what it sounds like is like Bradbury writing about people living on Mars. It's like, like people just like, hey, you don't make it back to the cabin, that's it. Like you're not. It's not going to happen.
Mhm.
And then like getting. I think there's one scene when Laura's teaching in like one of those little, like some tiny school shack, and the stove is like glowing red, and that's barely keeping them from getting frostbite while she's teaching. And you're like, okay, that is bending my brain to try to figure out. And I don't know. It's just amazing the kind of stuff that.
It's actually interesting because I was thinking about this when you guys were talking earlier, but I want to jump in. And you were mentioning I hadn't watched this discussion with JP yet, but about the birth issue. But and so you're talking about like this sort of Ark of the Covenant or Holiest of Holies sort of symbolism there. But one of the things that I immediately thought of was it's somewhat, it's a product of wealth or modernity to have such a separation of rooms in a home. In most recent, 120 years, 100 years, or anyone today that's in poverty, you don't have this separation of the rooms really. You have many people in one large room in a house. Now you may have a bed that is, specific to your parents, but we have this sort of separated and segmented lifestyle that was not the case for many people for a large part of history. Especially when you consider the birth rate was an average of 10 in the United States at the turn of the century. So I do think that while that is true in some sense, I think that the separation was not nearly as strong as it may be seem today with parents and children and the home, things of that nature. You stepped into someone's house to have dinner, their bed is also there,
Yeah. I mean, it is interesting, like when I was like all the extreme poverty that I've been around is in Latin America, but it's still like, like the first thing you put up is the curtain,
Yeah.
But and then you have to decide the thing between like, well, what's sort of like, what can you manage versus what's the normative situation, and so then if you have this sort of consistent movement towards that sort of structure as people move out of poverty, I would say that's as much of an indication of like how people want to structure their lives as what you can learn from the reality that's necessitated by severe poverty. So, and I mean, I think you can look at, there's certainly, boy, we can get lost in our houses, especially, I mean, I don't, again, speaking from here, like the number of people that I met in college who come out of these like, massive Texas subdivs where it's like, one or two kids in these giant houses. And you just, as you get insight into the lives, you realize that, yeah, they're just kind of like lost in this house. It feels sort of like some Borges story where like all these people are just lost in the labyrinth of this house. And there's really something, I mean, so we live in a tiny house and we have 4 young children, 4 children, 4 and under, and we are all on top of each other.
Yep.
And obviously there's like plenty of challenges with that, but there's also a lot of like, we're all here with each other all the time.
Honestly, one of the things I've noticed just studying mental health and stuff right now is you are so one thing we've started doing, and I was talking to Andrew about this earlier, but is telling people that for your mental health, you need to get away from people. Like we have retreats and we're constantly trying to get away from other people for our mental health. Well, if you're dealing with people who are crazy making and honestly, no. So mental illness is socially contagious. There's no question about this.
Yeah.
It is definitely healthy to get away from people who are crazy making. But you as an individual alone will lose your mind. And so the nuclear family and just like separating and becoming atomized individuals is also crazy making.
Yeah.
Again,
I
we
think
gotta
that's a
keep
good
that
point.
balance there. That balance there.
That's
Well,
why I'm a
yeah.
Jesus is the centrist, right? It's like that.
Radical centrist.
Well, it's not radical because it's you could say, but it's because I've talked to you before about opponent processing, right? Because there is a frame and that has to be resolved, and what the cultists do in that is they try and disrupt the resolution of frame or try and artificially control the frame, but Jesus is what actually creates that is and that's what I'm gonna get it right this time. Hopefully, C.K. Chesterton and his
Close.
GK.
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 You just
Oh
need
my gosh!
You need a little
GK
bit more on the
Chesterton.
C, just like a little line on that C.
Yeah,
We're good.
is like his whole thing with the distributism, right? Was like that, right? Is sort of like finding that middle ground, and like all these things. I think that Jesus is about finding that center that is otherwise unmarked, that resolves all these oppositions without one having to destroy the other, right?
That's interesting. I don't know if I would place it that way as far as I would see it, but because there's a very specific in Christ's teaching, right? There's a very specific line to those who are goats and sheep, right? So there isn't a radical centrism as much as there is a narrow path that one must be on for this particular
I agree.
salvation effort, right? So it's to do the centrist thing is a hard analogy for me because it's
Yes.
sort of feels fence city,
Oh yeah, well that's actually like Father Eric threw that radical word in there. I was never going radical with the centrism.
When you started talking about centrism, you reminded me of Lungfish. Do you guys remember Lungfish on BOM?
Oh yeah.
The radical centrist troll.
Yep.
What a guy.
Wow.
No,
When you say lungfish, I just think of air-breathing fish coating themselves in mucus to make it through the dry season. So
And that's kind of,
Yeah. So all I was saying is Jesus is centrist in the fact that he is the center of that radical path. He's at the end of that narrow path.
and he can
Showing us
unite
the
all
way.
of the extremes in himself.
that's yeah. I mean,
And the Holy Spirit is giving us those. What was the word that I
Rumble
forgot?
strips.
Rumble strips. The Holy Spirit's giving us
Yeah.
the rumble strips, so we stay on the narrow path.
Oh, the guardrails, yeah.
The
Okay.
guardrails, so we get to Jesus, right? So
The law is that, I mean, as far as the law
Yeah.
gives you the guardrails, right?
Yeah,
The only thing I'm going to
it's not
say
just the
about
law, though. It's because
about-
we have to. There's mercy as well. It's not.
the only thing I'm going to say about Lungfish is I actually met him. Nice guy, had lots of problems.
driving by
That's a
Braille.
great.
I don't
Right.
remember the person. Yeah.
Yeah. No. He was Catholic, so I tried to look out, but yeah.
So yeah, I mean, my reading, I haven't read Orthodoxy in a while, but I probably read it 5 or 6 times. It's not so much this sort of like happy mean as so much as this ability to integrate all of the virtues, because that was Chesterton's major concern, is that when you isolate one of the virtues or a couple of the virtues, you end up in this madhouse situation, which I mean is like absurdly it's like, yeah, everyone can see that. It's like compassion with nothing else, justice with nothing else,
Mm-hmm.
truth seeking with nothing. And it's like, and obviously they all collapse under the weight of themselves and they cease to become just or compassionate or merciful or what, or truthful or fortuitous or anything. But anyway, right. His point was not so much, try to find this happy mean, but Christ is the place where all of those things come together. And that's why in the church, you both have these people who are, St. Francis of Assisi, who's like, taking the clothes off his back, walking out of the court of law with his parents and be like, yeah, you take everything, including like, I'll walk out of here naked. And then you also have, warrior saints. And it's like, how can you have both of those? How can you have this like intense activity and this sort of, and also this intense surrender? How can you have, this sort of all this contemplation and activity and all of these things? And it's the integration rather than sort of the leveling. And he makes a big point out of, it's not about mixing the two of them together.
Yes.
So that you get some sort of watered down thing.
I agree.
It's
100%.
both of them all at once. And
when talking about the center is the center, like Jesus is the center, it's not a centrism. Jesus is the center. I'm not saying that it's in no way finding the mean. It's no way compromising. There's no compromise in Christ.
All right.
Right. It's about taking these different opposing forces and finding the truth behind them, right? So they're not pulling you in these deceptive directions. They're actually finding, like, through this, like, Christ being like the supreme being, like being the exemplar of all the virtues at once, showing you that resolution is possible, and then you finding your way down that narrow path to get there, right? So it's not so there's no compromise in Christ, I would say.
Right.
Like that's
Right.
so it's not a mean, it's not a compromise. That's not what I'm talking about at all, right? Yeah. And
Good.
Christ shows us that is possible.
Yeah. To embody it all. It's difficult.
Yeah.
That's why it's the God man.
Jacob,
Necessary.
what do you think of the book of Job? What is the book of, where does that?
I don't start crying the way Jess does every time somebody mentions it, but it's still one of my favorites.
So I've got a question. Is it, to your understanding, is it viewed as sort of like the introductory piece to the wisdom literature? Because, like, the way that all those writings are typically put together, Job is the first one before you get into, the Psalms and Proverbs and all the rest of it. And I've been, mulling over, is there something in Job that's supposed to be presented to us as sort of this, like, sort of entryway to wisdom? Do you know if there's
Fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, isn't it? Job got some of that right at the end. So
and the knowledge of your death. Those are the two. Those are the two sources of wisdom.
The one thing I'll bring up is there's a debate in the Talmud whether or not it's the story of an actual thing that happened or just an allegory. And one of the more common opinions is that it was actually written by Moses as a way of understanding, like, as a kind of counterpoint to Deuteronomy, right? Like, there are the promises, the Deuteronomic promises, yet we live in a world that is fallen, and
you have the best man who does everything right, and then the worst thing happens to him.
Right. And I mean, that's something that goes throughout the Bible. I mean, you can call it Christological typing. What do you guys call it exactly? But
typology, not typing. You're ruining it,
Jacob.
Sorry. But I mean, the idea of the suffering servant, that's a common thing throughout the Bible.
Yeah, and then it becomes, there's the whole thing of him being the intercessor for his friends afterwards. But I don't know. I just really, really love Job, and I was curious what you have.
Oh, if you haven't listened to Jess, do you know Jess?
He's not on BOM. He's
so
I don't even know how he found me, but I'm glad you're here.
Paul Vanderklay. I'd comment on one of Paul Vanderklay's videos. Yeah.
So Jess is one of the old school members of this little corner, and
where you at?
and he we have a joke that he starts crying whenever he talks about the Book of Job, because he starts crying whenever he talks about the Book of Job. And I think he and Sherry did a 15-hour discussion. Like, he has the Book of Job memorized. He
Whoa.
loves that book.
Mm.
And like, so if you want to talk to somebody about Job, Jess is your man.
Cool. Yeah. There's some really interesting things. I mean, this is a weird connection, but I don't know if any of y'all have ever read The Monsters and the Critics by Tolkien. It was his essay on Beowulf. Fascinating essay where he basically, my understanding is previously it had been seen as a sort of like weird, like little piece of Northern European history. And then he wrote it and people were like, oh, maybe this is actually one of the greatest pieces of literature in the Western world. And his contention is essentially about the timeline of it, because you have this weird, the first part where Beowulf is like glorious and he defeats Grendel and Grendel's mother. And then he's with the dragon and gets killed as an old man. And people are like, the timing makes no sense. This is a weird story. And Job is fascinating because you have these, to me, because you have these like two little bits of narrative at the beginning and the end, and then this huge chunk of discourse. And the thing that's kind of been like striking me so hard is the irony of everything that his friends say about Job, about how like God will never lift up a righteous man, and like, you know, God will never let a righteous man fall, and you know, and all, and you're like, well, yeah, I mean, if you just like flip 6 pages on, you see that much of this, it's a profoundly, like, in that sense, like, it's really ironic. So I've found myself like continually sort of like schooled in like my attempt to understand narrative by Job. Like, that's actually like, I feel like if you spend enough time with Job, like, it really teaches you a lot about like what narrative is for, what good narrative is, what's that interaction between narrative and our lives, like in what sense can we see our own lives as a narrative? I don't know. There's Jess probably knows all this stuff.
I'll bring up one of Father Eric's favorite authors, which is Thomas Aquinas. And the reason why Thomas Aquinas is a classic is when he asks a question, he asks real questions. Like, it's not can we beat up on the Protestants on this channel?
Do so.
I guess I'm the only one present. I don't know.
Well, I'm Protestant too. I'm okay with it.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm all right.
We're used to it.
It's not like some catechisms where they ask a question and like it's not a real question and the answer kind of obliterates the question. You know, there's real catechism, real instruction involves a real question. And so Job's friends aren't just caricatures. They're people who are saying things which, you know, religiously we struggle with. And then God reads them the riot act and tells them, you know, we have to recognize our limitations and who we are as human beings. But that is real intellectual engagement. And so shout out to Father Eric's homeboy, Thomas Aquinas, for that one.
Oh, yeah. No, and that's interesting. That Job's friends and the random guy who shows up at the end and never gets mentioned again. They weren't just trying to shut Job up or something, but they were really wrestling with it.
Well,
Yeah. Well, it also sort of it articulates well, as much of Scripture does, is the wisdom of man is never held in high regard.
So this Protestant tangent sort of brings up another one of my tabs for Father Eric that I had president. It's there's a conference called I think a Mere Simulacrity that happened in January, and one of the speakers did a talk called Hermetics and Perspectivalism, and he was a Protestant, Dr. William Roach. And I was listening to his talk yesterday on the way back from camp, and I thought it was really good. And he actually he was lamenting the fact that German idealism has basically completely infested modern hermeneutics. Hermeneutics, and he as a good Protestant would, he compared it. He
Is he a ginger?
to the, I think he might be. He compared it to the Luther's stand against the magisterium, and claimed that the woke German idealist take on hermeneutics was the new magisterium dictating how we should interpret the Bible. I thought it was an interesting talk.
Well, Mark liked that talk too. If you can find it, you can go ahead and drop it into the chat here.
I did.
Ah, there it is. There it is. Then we can all a little bit of quality reaping for Grim Grizz there. We have successfully reaped it. Both Xander and Mark liked it. And Grim Grizz thinks it's funny that I called somebody a ginger. Neutered Herman is suspicious.
But hermeneutics generally, because I think I like, and that was what I was talking about before, is because I as a new atheist who's seen the sort of the wave of evil sort of consume everything and me running in front of it, I think that the way that the Marxist cultists had to go over the Catholic Church was over the liturgy, but the way they needed to get out to corrupt the Protestant Church is through hermeneutics, because they needed to go after the interpretation of the Bible for the Protestants. And since the center, I think, of Catholic life is the liturgy, they needed to compromise that. I don't know if that's that needs some.
Yeah, I mean, you go straight for the center, right?
Yeah, and then because they need to bring the margins to the center, the margins, right, and then they invert and throw the center out, right? That's what they do.
It reminds me of this book I just read. Keith Windshuttle wrote it. It's called The Killing of History, and it's basically about how sociology and literary critics have basically destroyed historical hermeneutics and historical interpretation. And so what the lens by which we view and do history today from an academic perspective, people that are doing history and academics are infected and influenced by sociology to a degree that's essentially ruining any sort of history.
Well, that was Marx's thesis, right? He went after, like, he sort of started that whole assailment of history. Like, so that history through where it became that history through the critical lens, jumping a few iterations and mutations of Marxism there. But yeah, so so they're basically taking their German idealist tools that they refined to the constant reinvention and confusion of history to hermeneutics. And so and again, it's the disruption of the text. So it's like, so in history, it's like, did this fact that, like, it doesn't become about the history anymore. It's about the stuff around the history. It's like, okay, so why did the historian write this? And why did this, and why the historian highlight this fact instead of this other fact? And so the discussion moves away from what is actually presented in the historical text. And the same thing they're doing with hermeneutics is it's no longer about, well, what is the text and the symbolism of the text. We'll talk about, well, what was the author thinking and what was the historical context of how this was written. And then then you're playing a new shell game where then you're actually like creating this new creating a narrative around the narrative of the text, which disrupts the actual proper interpretation of the narrative within the text. The text of the, instead of considering what the story within the text is, they've moved you on to to their own story, right? That's surrounding the text and blocking you from getting to the actual truth that is revealed in the Bible.
Isn't that? I feel like is that what Peugeot is always getting on about the power of the feminine as being the power of the frame? I think that's
I
what
have
he's
not
always
heard
talking
that.
about. Yeah,
I mean, that
I think
I
that's.
would
I
love
think
to.
that's. He's
Because that
basically
sounds
like,
very good. Yeah.
yeah, he's like, which is more, which is more powerful, the question or the answer? It's like, well, if you get to control the question, then and he kind of has this correspondence between the feminine and the masculine.
Yeah, you can actually you could actually see that in why the devil had to go after Eve. Actually, I like that a lot, because I was actually like just talking this Friday in my Catholic dads group about Adam and Eve and why did Satan go after Eve, and that's sort of like, and I think you're really sort of hitting the nail of the answer that on the head there with Ted, with that whole idea of like framing the question, because Adam was like, there's really sort of two forces that would influence Adam, right? It would either be the father or Eve, right? So the father told Adam, like, he basically gave him two instructions in the garden. It was like plow the fields, right? Provide and also defend. So he would actually, if the serpent came after Adam directly, Adam would perceive him as an intruder, and presumably like reject anything Satan said out of hand. But by going through Eve, then Eve can present the frame that that frames the question, and then Adam surrenders like to her, right? Because she's sort of the center of the heart of his world. I don't know if I'm getting sort of lost in a lot of things there, but I think that there's something there which you're saying there, Ted. It gets back to the story in Genesis.
I'm getting a little lost myself, and I think it mostly has to do with the nonsense with the clocks and waking up early. So, thank you all. Bruce, nice to have you on. We've got some regulars here. Jacob, nice to have you on. You don't jump on all that often, but it's always good to have you. And Ted and Xander and Valerie, thank you very much. God bless you all. Good night.
God bless. Take care.
God bless.
Right.